They say some deals should never be broken, and this story is proof of that. Stay until the end because what Humberto did will freeze your blood. A long time ago, there was a builder named Humberto. In his town, he was considered one of the best, always compliant, always impeccable in his work. His name commanded respect, and when someone needed a solid work, they sought him out without hesitation. That is how a wealthy cattle rancher, Don Abel Marquez, hired him to build a house on his hacienda. The two closed the deal. The house had to be ready in exactly 100 days. Humberto accepted with confidence, confident that it would be another perfect work. The first days everything went well. Brick after brick, construction was progressing normally. However, fate began to play against him. The sky darkened, and the town was hit by torrential rains, the heaviest in decades. The water fell relentlessly, day after day, and the ground was transformed into a quagmire that swallowed the efforts of the workers. What at first seemed like a simple project became a nightmare impossible to control. The men tried to follow, but the water prevented them from carrying the materials. Humberto helplessly watched as the deadline was shortened, and the house barely raised its walls. With only 1 month to go, he knew it was impossible to finish on time. One rainy afternoon, while the mud stained everything around him, Humberto spoke with Don Abel. "Boss, the rains have stopped us. We will not be able to finish on time." The rancher stared at him with no compassion in his eyes. "That doesn't matter to me, Humberto. You have 100 days, not one more. The house must be ready even if the sky splits in two. If you don't, you won't see a single penny." Those words fell like a sentence. Humberto felt the weight of the threat crushing his chest. He tried to insist, but Don Abel was blunt. "That's your problem, buddy. Solve it." The days continued to be marked by desperation. Sometimes they could move forward, but most of the time the rain ruined everything. Humberto saw how the work was slipping out of his hands and ruin was approaching. The penultimate day arrived with the house still unfinished. The materials were purchased, but without money to pay his workers, he had to fire them. With his head down, he paid them what little he owed them and watched them go. None of them said a word, but their looks spoke of disappointment. Alone, surrounded by half-built walls and wet tools, Humberto felt a cold different from that of water, that of despair. That night when he returned home, he believed that perhaps with an honest explanation, the boss would understand. But fate had another plan. When darkness was already enveloping everything, someone knocked on his door. It was Don Abel with the same hardness on his face. "Tomorrow at dawn, I want to see my house finished. If it's not ready, you know very well what will happen." Humberto, swallowing hard, replied with forced firmness, "Don't worry, boss, it will be finished." Don Abel looked at him suspiciously, and before leaving he left an icy warning. "Make sure there are no surprises." When Humberto closed the door, his body trembled. He had promised something impossible to fulfill. Silently he said to himself, "I have no choice but to resort to the extreme." And so, in the early morning, he left his house and went to the unfinished work. The place was deserted, lit only by the pale moon. The shadows on the walls seemed to watch him, and then, with a racing heart and a broken voice, he cried out into the darkness, "Hey, Chamuco, I offer you my soul if you will help me finish this house before dawn." The air turned freezing. A dense silence enveloped him, and then a low, guttural laugh emerged from the shadows. Out of the darkness appeared an indescribable figure, with bright eyes and a crooked smile. Humberto knew that he had called something that he should not awaken. "What did you say you're going to give me, boy?" the deep voice thundered. Humberto, with a thread of courage, answered, "My soul. But I need this house to be ready before dawn." The dark figure laughed and made the air vibrate. "That's simple, boy. When the last brick is laid, your soul will be mine." Humberto nodded with a lump in his throat. "Do what you have to do, but do it quickly." The entity raised a hand, and immediately the shadows came to life. Hammers that moved by themselves, shovels that sank into the mud, bricks that were placed with impossible precision. Within minutes, what would have taken humans weeks was moving at a frantic pace. Humberto watched, paralyzed between amazement and terror. The walls grew, the ceilings rose, and every corner of the house took shape under that supernatural energy. The night clock ran without stopping. Humberto's heart was beating so hard that he could hear it in his ears. Each spectral hammer blow rang like a funeral bell, reminding him that his soul was already compromised. Then, in a fit of desperate cunning, he devised a plan. As the shadows worked tirelessly, he took one of the last bricks and hid it under an old rag, pressing it to his chest as if it were his only salvation. No one noticed him, not even the figure who watched him from the shadows with a satisfied expression. With the first rays of dawn filtering over the horizon, the demon spoke in a deep voice. "It's all finished, builder friend. Just in time. Your soul is mine." Humberto, trembling, stepped forward and lifted the hidden brick. "No. The work is not finished. This brick is missing." The entity looked at him incredulously. His mocking smile was disfigured into a grimace of fury. "Do you dare to play with me?" Humberto took a deep breath, although fear destroyed him inside. The deal was clear. My soul would be yours when the last brick was laid before dawn. It's dawn, and this brick is not laid. The silence became unbearable. The demon roared with such force that the ground trembled beneath his feet. His face, deformed by anger, approached Humberto until it almost touched him. "Someday you'll pay me back. I will never forget this deception." With a roar that shook the newly erected walls, the figure recoiled and vanished into the mist. The air returned to normal, but Humberto knew that he would never be completely free. Breathing heavily, he dropped to his knees. He had survived, but at the cost of something greater, the eternal hatred of that creature. With trembling hands, he hid the brick under a pile of wood and finished going over the facade. Minutes later, Don Abel arrived. With the sun illuminating the impeccable house, the skipper smiled, satisfied. "Wow, Humberto." Completed. He handed her the promised money, without imagining what had happened during the night. The builder greeted him with a mixture of relief and weariness, knowing that he had made it, but at a price that only he understood. The news spread like a whisper throughout the village. People said that Humberto was the best, that neither the rains nor the impossible deadline stopped him. However, the older ones murmured another version, that he had deceived the devil himself. And now I ask you, what would you have done instead? Would you dare to make a pact like this?